It is such a pleasure to connect with two of my favorite people in the world, the messenger of kindness, Nick Haines, and ye who represents freedom and fierceness from up north, Runa Magnus. Thank you guys so much for this book, The Story of Boxes, and for being with me on this special edition of Ask the Author.
Oh.
Thank you, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you. It's absolutely our pleasure and a joy. We've been really looking forward to speaking with you.
Well, I adore you both so very much. I have so much love in my heart for both of you, and particularly for your courageous, bold stepping out of your boxes to talk about boxes. No, I mean this seriously, because for someone like myself who lived very confined in boxes, it's something that I share. I want everybody to step out, but what you guys have not even attempted, I was going to say attempted, what you have succeeded in doing with this book, and now with the No More Boxes movement and these breakfast clubs in various countries, I think it's just phenomenal. So I salute you for that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We really appreciate that. It's always a tough one, doing something very new and slightly challenging. So thank you for recognizing that.
Yeah. So Runa, I'm going to start with you, because we've had a lot of conversations about boxes and how labels, roles, identities, they can sometimes confine us and define us. What have you found most inspiring about writing this book and now sharing the No More Boxes movement?
For me, it has really been, it's twofold. It's been my own journey, observing my own boxes that I was absolutely not aware of that I was doing. And as the consequences of that, raising my own awareness, I could see the effect that it had on my own life, how much it changed by seeing the world through let's say without that lens, without the box lens. And I'm also so aware that even though I know more now than I did before we started writing this book and started the movement, I am so aware that I'm still so filtered. So for me, I feel like I'm doing this for I'm doing this for humankind. And that is, I say that with, as humbly as I can possibly say it, because I really feel that this is something that we need to be more aware of. But I'm also saying that, me being in the ego in me saying, wow, I've learned so much. And I just be honest, that's really what it is. So for me, the whole thing has been about me personally. And it has also been how every single time I talk about, just when we start the conversation, are you getting tired of women or this man or that? There isn't a soul that doesn't stop and say, oh yes. That's something.
Yeah. Well, Nick, you have been in the business of classifying people, right? So if we look at the vitality test, which is so brilliant, as you know, I'm a huge fan of your work in the vitality test, which allows us to find out which of these 5 elements of Chinese philosophy influence us. Now, obviously, these are energetic influences, and of course, you talk about all of these energies existing in us. But it's very interesting to me that you have been able to help people really claim their energetic profile, which is a sort of boxing or labeling and identifying. How have you reconciled that with this No More Boxes movement and with the book, The Story of Boxes?
That's an absolutely brilliant question. What it is that the vitality test, it gives us a pattern, a shape. It's not yin and yang, polarity based, like most profile tests. And that's where the idea came from when I was talking at the United Nations about how we put each other in boxes. Men are like this, women are like this. That's a really yin and yang classification. This or this, that or... And the whole thing with the vitality test, it's a pattern, it's a shape. And that's the reality that we exist with as human beings. Me as a man, I'm a pattern, I'm a blend of collaboration and straightforwardness. And so very much the boxes movement is about seeing the pattern that we are rather than the polarity that we are. So it fits, it's the same thing, looking for the pattern in us, not the polarity in us.
Got it. I love that distinction. So this question is for both of you. You do such a beautiful job in the very beginning of the book of teasing up how boxes serve us, because you're not saying let's get rid of all boxes. If you like the box you're in, if it's serving you, you can keep it. But let's talk, I'd like to hear from each of you. How do you define boxes? And how do we know which ones to keep and which ones to say no more to?
Nick, do you want to start and I then go?
Yeah, happy to, thank you. So boxes is basically this propensity we have to classify people, to say, you're like this, men are like this, and women like this. So and then to start putting lots of other things in the boxes as well. So men are like this, and that therefore means they are forthright, driven, logical, and all the other things that stack up in there. And then we do the same to women. And the issue is it traps people within that perspective. And it also, and I think this is the most important thing, is if you put things in boxes, it creates a division between them. And in that division is where you have defense, arguments, isolation, fear. Whereas so the actual classifying in its simple terms is fine. I'm a man and you're a woman, but putting other labels on top of it starts to become problematic. And there's lots of things that you can see. So when I first read that Adolf Hitler was a vegetarian, I thought, that can't be. And what was that? Well, because I have a vegetarian box. It says vegetarians are peace-loving, they're collaborative, they care for each other, they want to save the world, they tend to be pacifist, and all the other stuff that I have in vegetarian box. I just don't happen to have mass murderers in there. But why couldn't Adolf Hitler have been a he chose to eat vegetables. That's it. As vegetarians do. It does not give them any other layer of classification. So that's the nature of what boxes are. And they are, like you say, the book is called The Story of Boxes, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because they are good. You can have a sisterhood, a brotherhood, a group of people that come together to have a common goal. But they also can be groups of people that come together that then validate their own experience and their own truth, and then isolate other people from that place. So they're both good, bad, and ugly, and you can have the same box fulfilling each of those roles. And the book is really about teaching us just to heighten our awareness, so we can say, okay, this bit is good, but I've just pushed someone out as a result of creating this box, and that isn't okay, in my view.
Yeah.
Being the kindness ambassador.
Up until 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I know. Ooh, after that. For me to answer that, I think it's like Nick is saying, this thing about being aware is such a crucial thing. Now, if we take a box such as the relationship box, now you can go into a relationship and it can be a beautiful box. You feel loved, you feel cherished, you feel everything is so, you feel like you are being nurtured, you feel like you're being listened to, you know, and it's a beautiful box. But we have quite a lot of that particular box turning into a bad and even being a really ugly box. So awareness, being aware, first of all, knowing who you are. It goes back to that, knowing who I am and what am I here to do on this planet, really, if you want to go that deep. In order for you to live the highest version of yourself. So being aware and constantly just taking your own pulse and looking at it and just being aware, okay, is this relationship box, is it, am I in a good one, a bad one, or an ugly one? And if I'm aware that I am turning my relationships are turning into a bad and ugly, then I can start to do something about it. If I'm not aware, then that's where I am.
Yeah, that sense of awareness. You know, for me personally, the boxes that confined me the most, that eventually led to, you know, my breakdown with depression, is I felt like I always needed to live up to some external expectation, and I needed to tick all these little boxes to fit in that box and that classification. But when it really got to the point where it was suffocating me, that's when I said no more to those boxes. But the challenge that I really felt was all of this self-judgment and self-hatred that was, again, my bottom line, where I realized I can't go on living this way. So for me, there was no choice but to break out of that box. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It makes perfect sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And therefore, you know, you need quite a lot of courage.
Yeah.
So there are layers on the top of that. You know, whom am I inviting into my box?
And I think the other thing that fits with what you experienced is the majority of our boxes are actually nestled deep within our unconscious thinking and our unconscious mind, which is where our unconscious bias comes from. By its very nature, it's unconscious bias. So some of the stuff that you dealt with in terms of redefining yourself or escaping your box was you had to deal with the stuff that was sitting in your unconscious mind. And as we know, that's not an easy ask. This isn't logic. This is stuff that we were influenced by from the moment that we were born. And there's layers, and it's deep in our unconscious mind, this stuff. Yeah.
And that is exactly how I experienced it. And as you say, Runa, I definitely got to this point where I had to question everything. Who am I? What do I really stand for? What do I really love in this life, rather than just looking towards these external peers and society and what have you.
And
there's one of the things that when we talk about in the book, we talk about what the drivers for the book, the drivers for the boxes. And safety is one of the drivers. Boxes, they make us feel safe. So as Runa said, you have to have courage to even question that you're in a box, let alone do the action to actually escape it or adapt it or change it or evolve it in some way.
And I've seen that. We've seen that in the No More Boxes breakfast clubs and breakthrough events that we have set up following the launching the movement and the book. You see, when people are looking at the drivers, they go, now I understand. And I think the more that we understand why we're doing these things and understanding it in a non-judgmental way, you know, be kind to yourself when you open them up and look at them. You know, don't judge yourself. It just is. We are all there. I've really felt that has been one of those big aha moments as people are experiencing their bias and where does that come from? And just realizing it's just something that maybe has nothing to do with even your upbringing. It had to do with the upbringing of your great.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because you both, you know, are very honest in the book, talking about your heritage, your influence coming from England, coming from Iceland. You had one particular or several particular views on the world. So to step out and start talking to the rest of the world about, you know, bias and this cultural inheritance. Now let's talk about that. And, you know, just to jump ahead, you both just came back from visiting my country, the United States, and you even spent time where I went to university, Atlanta, which, you know, was a hotbed of all sorts of boxes and judgment and prejudice and racism. So talk to us about the cultural inheritance and the significance and where we are today as global citizens.
Do
That's a good one.
I know there's a lot to unpack there.
There's a lot to uncover on that one. What I can say, if I just give you a little brief of when it comes to my own culture and my own upbringing, and being born and raised in the country of Iceland, being a woman, right, living in the country of Iceland, which says, you know, been number one place on this planet for, well, they say the best place for women to live in. I would like to change that statement and say it's the best place for humans to live in, because I believe if the one gender feels good, the other gender feels also good. And so we take, so there's so much of our upbringing and so much of my upbringing being brought up in such a freedom, not only freedom to speak and freedom to be, but also just nature has had such a big impact on my upbringing, being able to be out there in nature and experience and be in touch with that. I think that whole thing has had such an impact on my own life. That doesn't mean that it's all fine and dandy. We have other issues. We have other boxes that we need to look at, and one of them might even be not taking things so much for granted and thinking that everyone else out there has that same thing and is coming from the same place. One of the things that I noticed, and was really a big thing for me when I realized that this saying that I believe, for me, it came from my upbringing, being brought up in the Protestant Lutheran Church, is that saying, treat your neighbor like you would like to be treated. And excuse the language, that's the biggest bullshit that I have ever heard.
Why?
And I think, because why on earth, Andrea, should I treat you the way I want to be treated? It has to be, I should treat you the way you want to be treated. And that involves space for you so that I get to know you and I get to understand you. And so I think if I would take that approach, I'm not judging you, I'm giving you space to show who you are before I start to judge you. And I think if we just would start to revisit so many of those embedded sayings and things and words that we use, and we start to just pay attention, what are we saying? Because each and every word, it has an energy to it.
Yeah.
And that could lock us in without knowing it.
Nick? Oh, you're still muted.
There we go. I'm free. I think one of the things that was interesting writing the book was exploring the nature, like Runa saying, of our own boxes. And one of them was, we're writing this book from the perspective of being two white people in a very comfortable country, respective countries. So one of the things of recognizing the boxes, it's recognizing really what you don't know and what you haven't experienced. I don't know the brilliance of being a woman. I don't know the sisterhood. I know what it's like to be a man, but so I'm being very clear that the nature of women, I can imagine, but I don't know the sisterhood, the brilliance, but I also don't know the glass ceilings and the prejudice. I know what it's like to be white. I don't know the pride and the joy of being a different culture and a different color. And I also don't know the prejudice and the stuff that goes on. So when we were writing the book, we were being very clear that we're coming from our boxes that we have and our perspective. And the book is trying to facilitate a conversation that can happen between different people with different experiences and in different boxes. But it's very clear that we don't know what we don't know. But what we do know is many things are fundamentally very deeply wrong. And as you said right at the beginning, we stepped out of our comfort place to stand up and just say, what's happening is wrong at a deep, profound level. And we think boxes are part of what the trouble is. And therefore, we bring them up and write a book about it and use our time and our energy and our passion in this direction because of what is fundamentally needs to change. Although we might not have experienced it.
Mm-hmm. So when you look at where we are today and some of the advice that you've given in the book and inviting people to join the movement, where would we start if we're looking sort of as global citizens, recognizing that our boxes, our prejudices, our biases are, for many of us, no longer fitting? You know, we can look at our country of origin or our family of origin, and people are waking up saying, just because my granddaddy thought that, I don't believe that. That doesn't fit my value system. So how do we peacefully, and I'll start with you, Nick, since you are the ambassador of kindness, how do we bring these conversations to the fore so that we can get to that level of awareness and insight where people are really looking critically at the boxes and the biases that we may have inherited and that may be creating divisions?
Well, one of the things that we didn't expect until we started to run these events was the types of conversation that boxes invoke. We kind of had a bit between Runa and myself and a few people, but what basically happens when you start talking about the biases and the prejudice and background in terms of being a box, and you get the drivers as to why they're there, suddenly it becomes a blame-free environment where people no longer feel they need to hold on to something that came from history or something that and the boxes, the very term boxes changes the energy, and suddenly it becomes a conversation about boxes and not about people. And it until you experience it, it is it's a phenomenal difference. Just even this conversation, oh, you're in this, I think I've just put you in a box. Oh, I'm really sorry. Oh, that's okay. We all do it. That's cool. And so I retract my box. You admit that you were never in it in the first place. And there's a different sort of conversation. It's a conversation of interweaving discussions rather than what the conversation is normally about is from boxes. So we go out of the box to have a conversation about boxes, and it is astounding what happens. And the other thing that in the book that we also do, we talk really about how you can deal with the unconscious mind and how you can tap into dealing with the biases and the boxes that come from there. And that, as you know, that's some of my best work is actually in the book as to how we actually do that.
Awesome. Runa?
I don't even know if I can really add much to what Nick said, because he was just really profound in what he was saying. It is really, you know, some of the things that we, in the conversations that we had, like Nick was mentioning, was, and it might even sound silly when you think about it, why we don't have that on a day-to-day basis, is that safe space to be vulnerable, safe space to explore, safe space to say things that we might never have even said out loud. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it becomes, ooh, whoa, where did that come from? When you start to dig just slightly underneath that surface. And then when you start to understand, hey, this is what I'm wired for. I'm wired to see things this way. That opens up some new possibility. And we all know that doing the same old thing will give you the same old results. So we're really opening for new results with that whole conversation. Mm-hmm. I personally, I think that is one of I get goosebumps just thinking about the openings that have already appeared.
Yeah. That's really the impression I got when I read the book. Like, whoa, this is creating an opening for us to have these very honest and sometimes vulnerable dialogues about some of them. It's not like even just like the ugly bias of hatred. It's just preconceived notions that we just sort of took for granted or assumed were always right. So I love that this is opening a safe space for us to have a conversation in a totally different way without pointing fingers at people. Instead, we're just pointing fingers at these boxes, these labels.
Mm. And for me, it was quite a breakthrough writing the book, because I was dyslexic, and at school I had particularly when I was kind of 8, 9, 10, and I couldn't read or write very well. So that then became my dyslexic box, that I can't write a book, or I can't do, and I was told very distinctly and very clearly I was stupid. And so it takes quite a bit to enter and break out of those boxes that we defined really early on.
Yeah.
So just discovering those boxes, those layers that have suppressed you at some level, it's just phenomenal when we start to enter those conversations. Another thing I think is interesting about the events and discussion is that people laugh. They start to laugh at the silliness of, oh God, I think I've just, and people, we're in a deep, powerful, transformative conversation about stuff that people have got hidden. And when it gets revealed, they just laugh, or they cry, or they breathe a sigh of relief. But the events are not short of laughter.
No. And then again, Nick, I think that is something that that's one of the good boxes that we are in, you and I, that we that's something that serves our value system. It's really important for us to facilitate a thing that is, although it's deadly serious. Yeah. You just have to remember that you're never going to get out of this life alive anyway. So.
Yeah, you do bring the lightheartedness and the humor to very serious conversations. Well, I want to encourage everyone to get the digital copy of The Story of Boxes, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And in the new year, you can pick up the print version as well. So Nick and Runa, tell me, what is your vision now for the No More Boxes movement, and where will you be doing your No More Boxes breakfast clubs?
I can start with sharing that. I have an ambitious goal. At the end of next year, and I'm just using the opportunity, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to put it out there. By the end of next year, I want us to have touched upon minimum 5 million people.
Okay.
That they have at least some knowledge, some nugget that they are in a box, and this is their behavior, and this is something that they can do something about. So 5 million people is my, and plus, I'm going to say plus, because I welcome 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, even 50. That's no problem, but that's my goal. And the next breakfast club is already scheduled. We are so honored to have been invited to set up our next breakfast club at the Icelandic Embassy in Washington, D.C. in January 2019.
Ooh, awesome.
The other thing I think is important to remember about the No More Boxes breakfast clubs is we're trialing them, we're refining them, we're doing them with all sorts of people. So London, we did lots of academics, and in Atlanta, lots of people on the kind of cold face of doing things, and lots of ordinary people in house. And we're really trialing it to find the best way to do them, because the intention is not that we do the breakfast clubs, but that people are given the tools to run their own in their own home around the table. And every single breakfast club we do, someone says, or 2 or 3 people say, oh, I want to do these. I want to do these. Someone said, one of the ones we did in Nottingham, I want to do this for young parents. I want to do as they're pregnant, about to have a child, to do a breakfast club, perhaps about gender, or perhaps about occupation, and then they said I could do a club about this, all these different topics. So the idea is that we are facilitating these breakfast clubs, but actually it's about teaching other people to do them, and they are great fun to do. Anybody can do them in their own home. They just need to have that willingness to do it. So we're producing materials for people to be able to do them in their own home, and that's why we're going to get the 5 million, because everyone loves them. Everybody loves them.
Can you envision breakfast clubs all over the world?
Yeah.
Absolutely, I can see it. I can see myself at one or hosting them. Absolutely, especially here in France, where there's a lot of nationalism and pride. I would love to see some of those conversations.
Yeah, pride is good. Pride is good. It's just when it
starts to get in the way.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Thank you both so very much for your contribution to bringing more kindness and self-love and love of others into the world. So thank you for writing the story of boxes, and I will invite our viewers to check out the No More Boxes movement. Just go to nomoreboxesmovement.com. You can learn there about these breakfast clubs, and if you'd like to host a No More Boxes breakfast club in your city, state, country, then you can get in touch with Runa and Nick. Thank you both.
Oh, thank you.
And congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Did you enjoy that interview? I sincerely hope so. If you did, remember to click that like button and share this video with someone else who needs a little positivity sprinkled into their life. And please do support the author by purchasing the book at your favorite bookstore. If you or somebody you know would like to spread your own message to the world, then check out our publishing options online at makeyourmarkglobal.com. We specialize in helping healers, coaches, lightworkers, and other soulful entrepreneurs who want to share their message with a global audience. We also do speaker training and authentic personal branding. I look forward to connecting with you again, and until then, remember, my friend, you are a gift to the world. So share your presence with passion. Much love.